Welcome into another edition of Where the 99 Lead. I'm Andrew Joyce, and it is another edition of Where the 99 Lead, brought to you by the University of Pikeville, where we talk all things regarding the University of Pikeville. Today, we talk history, we talk social sciences, we talk political science. Dr. Nancy Cade, Chair of the Division of Social Science, Professor of History and Political Science at the University, on Where the 99 Lead again. Welcome back in.
Thank you.
Of course, we had a great show last year talking about the social sciences department at the University of Pikeville. Here we go again, another year, and we have some new things to talk about, exciting things.
Absolutely. It's been a great year.
Let's catch folks up on Dr. Nancy Cade. Let's talk about your background, how you arrived at Pikeville, when you arrived at Pikeville, and what classes you still teach.
I arrived in Pikeville in August of '86. I was just finishing up my PhD in social science from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. And I've been teaching here ever since. And I teach a variety of courses. I teach all the political sciences. One of my favorite things to teach is Introduction to American Government and Politics, because that's where I get to bring the freshmen into what I refer to as the owner's manual, which is the Constitution, and introduce them to all the aspects of that. And then I teach European histories. I teach some American history. So I teach a variety of things.
If it has to do with social sciences, Nancy Cade is involved.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In the classroom and in other ways as well. Let's talk about freshmen. Let's talk about freshmen that come in and they're getting their first taste of the Constitution. I recall my children at that age, and a lot of times they have very strong opinions. What are freshmen like when you encounter them and you start talking government, you start talking the Constitution, and how do their opinions change?
Well, one of the things that I like to remind people is my job is to introduce them to the Constitution.
Sure.
My job is not to make someone a good Democrat or a good Republican.
Right.
It's to introduce them to what is actually in the Constitution. And one of the first things I do in my classes is I ask my students, how many students in the classroom have ever said, that's unconstitutional?
Right.
For whatever thing, whatever topic it is. That's
I got
unconstitutional.
grounded for 2 weeks, and to their parents,
that's
said,
unconstitutional.
That's unconstitutional.
But then I will ask them, how many of you have ever actually read the document?
Right.
And I mean more than just the we the people part, more than the preamble. Most of them have never read it.
Sure.
And so my follow-up is always, how do you know if it's unconstitutional if you haven't read it? It takes the average American with the average American's reading ability about 47 minutes to read the Constitution.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
And the writing is fairly challenging on some levels, but still in all, read the Constitution before you argue it. And that's what I spend the entire semester going over every aspect of the Constitution.
I can imagine freshmen, how much they change from August to December, and then from August to May, not just in those type classes, but in all classes. But how great is the change in freshmen that you see, for instance, in that 101 class of American government from August to December? One
of the most exciting things to me is to watch students develop self-confidence, that their values, their ideas, their opinions, as long as they're based on reality, matter. That they have the confidence to say, no, I don't agree with that, and this is why. And that, to me, is one of the joys of being an educator, is to watch that develop.
Absolutely.
And it develops more and more. And every semester that you know students, and one of the things I like about teaching at the University of Pikeville is I get to know students when they come in as freshmen, all the way through till they graduate, and stay in contact with them after they graduate.
Talking with Dr. Nancy Cade, the chair of the Division of Social Science at the University of Pikeville today. Dr. Cade, we've talked about your background. You've been there since 1986. You've seen a lot of changes on campus. What are some of the most exciting changes that you've seen at the university in your time there?
Wow. Exciting changes. The physical footprint of the college has changed so much. When I first came here, the library was in Record Memorial Building,
Sure.
and it was a rabbit warren of hallways and stairways and stacks, and just getting around it was difficult. And now
Right.
it's in its own building,
Yes.
which was a tremendous change. I've had several offices in Wickham Hall, and I recently moved into Armington. We're going to move all the faculty out of Wickham and convert that space to residence hall spaces for the students.
Right.
And so watching the transition of more and more housing available for students and creating a more on-campus atmosphere. When I first came here, it was a commuter college.
Right.
And now we have more students on campus, and that always creates a greater learning environment and just more fun.
Absolutely. You're involved with the Washington Center. We talked about it the last time you were on. First of all, let's tell listeners, viewers, what the Washington Center is.
The Washington Center for Internships and Academic Seminars, based obviously in Washington, D.C., has been in business for 37 years. They just celebrated a few weeks ago their 50,000th alumnus.
Wow.
So they have been doing it on a large scale. They are the largest provider of internships in Washington, D.C., and they also do academic seminars. And people tend to think, when they think an internship in Washington, D.C., they think, oh, you're going to intern at the White House, or you're going to intern on the Hill,
Right.
or you're going to intern at the State Department or something like that. All of those internships are available, but they can also intern at the National Institutes of Health if they're interested in pre-med.
Sure.
They can also intern at Merrill Lynch or a private business that does public relations. All of those types of internships are available, media internships. And that is something we are trying to get started on the Hill. We've had one intern who interned several semesters ago. We'll have another intern going in the spring, and we're hoping to get it going. The Washington Center has given us 2 scholarships for $1,000 each to send our first 2 students at this point, and so we're sending one in January. But we're also involved in the seminars, and we will have 6 students going to the inauguration seminar in January, where they'll learn about the history of inaugurations, they'll learn about the presidency, they'll learn about the media, they'll be hearing incredible speakers. At past inauguration seminars, we heard from the director of the Secret Service as far as security for the
Right.
for the inauguration. Then we also hear from presidential historians, hear from media like John King at CNN,
Sure.
and people like that. And then they'll have the opportunity to go to the inauguration. Now, they won't have a ticket, but they have between now, when the 6 students have been accepted for scholarships, between now and the inauguration to start talking to their congressman about getting
Yes.
tickets. And of course, you can't really plan until after the election.
Sure.
But they'll be there, and I hope to be there with them. But we have 6 students going on the Fred W. Meyer Washington Center Scholars Program.
What do these opportunities mean for University of Pikeville students?
I recently had the opportunity to talk to some of our alums who have been through some of these. And to a person, they have told me that the Washington Center, because that's what I am most directly involved in,
Yes.
has been not just academically transformative, but life-changing.
Wow.
And I have watched students develop that self-confidence when they go to Washington, D.C., and they're with 300 or 700, like we had at the inauguration program in '09, students from all over the world, because I have had students from Albania in my group, I've had students from Canada in my group, I've had British students, in addition to Pikeville students when I've worked the seminars.
Sure.
They find out that they are just as bright, just as talented, just as capable as a student from Berkeley or a student from Harvard. They can hold their own with these students.
Sure.
And it changes their lives. And that is something that's just exciting to me. I enjoy being part of it.
Eye-opening and a tremendous confidence boost in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You recently attended the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte,
Yes, I did.
and I want to talk about that as part of your role with the Washington Center And tell us about the convention this in Charlotte, and tell us what you did there.
Well, I have to back up a little bit. In in summer of '04, I attended the Democratic Convention with the Washington Center in Boston. In '08, I attended the Republican Convention in Minneapolis, St. Paul with the Washington Center. And this time, we didn't send any students, so I didn't get hired by the Washington Center to go. And so I wasn't planning on going to the convention.
Right.
But I had already applied for media credentials to both Republican and Democratic convention. And I received an email a few weeks before the convention notifying me that I was going to be part of the accredited media for the Democratic convention. I thought, oh, well, looks like I'm going to have to give up my accreditation and give it to somebody else. And I was talking to Dean Tom Hess at the university, and my husband, John Cade, who also, by the way, teaches at the university. And I was telling them that, I had gotten the media credentials. And they said, well, you're going. And I said, well, no, I'm not going there to work. And they said, yeah, but you're going to the convention because you can't pass it up. And so I had the opportunity to go without having any obligations. I blogged for the university a little bit.
Right.
But going to the convention, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, since I've been to both, is an experience as an academic I can't pass up.
Sure.
There's something that we refer to as touching the bones, actually going in and being part of the process and watching it and observing it and meeting with delegates. I met with a delegate from Wisconsin who was actually from Paul Ryan's district.
Right.
And to get her perspective as a Democrat about the Republican nominee. It's tremendously exciting to be part of the convention process. And as a member of the accredited media, I was able to get into places that some people might not be able to.
Let's talk about the experience in general, getting around. What a convention city is like. The everyday items, where do I stay, where do I eat, getting transportation to and fro. Let's talk about that, because Charlotte, I'm sure, was a buzz.
Oh, yeah. I was very lucky. I have some connections in the Pennsylvania delegation, because you can't just get a hotel room.
Right.
The convention takes over all of the hotel rooms, and they don't release them until just a few days before, the unused ones, until just a few days from the convention. So I had some connections in the Pennsylvania delegation, even though I'm from Indiana and I live in Kentucky.
Yes.
I have friends that work in Pennsylvania, and so they had some overflow rooms, and so I was able to get one of their rooms in a hotel that I don't think I would stay in by choice, but I got the hotel room. And then when you can actually see as the convention gets closer. I went down on Friday, and I was able to park which is NASCAR Museum, which is right next to the convention center, to go and pick up my credentials for the media party. And no problem, able to park in there. They hadn't shut down what's called the perimeter yet.
Yes.
And so then, a few days later, you weren't able to pull in there anymore, because in order to get into certain places, you have to have the credentials.
Right.
And one of the interesting phenomena was to pick up your credentials in the convention center, you had to have a credential to get into the convention center.
Yes.
And so that was kind of fun.
Uh-huh.
But the getting around became very easy. They have a light rail system, and if you had a credential, you could ride from the convention center right to the arena. Most of the hotels that had delegates at or media ran shuttle buses, and so I was able to take a shuttle bus right to the convention center, right to the arena, actually. Getting around is easy if you have the credentials.
Yes.
If you don't have the credentials, don't go to a convention city. You're not going to get into anything that you want to get into. Credentials
will open a lot of doors.
Absolutely.
I've learned that as well. You mentioned a media party thrown by the host city. Talk about that.
Media parties are extraordinary events. It's an opportunity for the host city. They have media from literally everywhere in the world.
Yes.
And so they invite the media to a party to show off what the city's all about.
Absolutely.
And it's all free. They always have entertainment. I remember at the Boston Democratic Convention, the media party, there was a Ferris wheel indoors. I'd never seen anything quite like that before. Used to seeing them outside, but not inside.
Right.
But everything is free. They want all the local restaurants provide food, catering. They want to show off what the city is all about. And Charlotte did a very nice party. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, about an hour into the party, it started to pour rain. So that made it a little uncomfortable, but we were able to find some places indoors and hide out, if you will, while it rained. But I saw an awful lot of media walking around in the rain. They didn't care.
Talking with Dr. Nancy Cade, chair of the Division of Social Science and a professor at the University of Pikeville, talking about the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte. What's your grade? How did this city of Charlotte do?
I had some problems with it. The city of Charlotte was fine, but the venue itself, the arena itself, was really small.
Yes.
It looked very nice on TV, very intimate, but they had to take the delegations up the bowl so that the media was basically in the skyboxes around the top and in the nosebleed seats around the top,
Sure.
which I didn't have any problem with where I was sitting because I had a straight view of the stage. But I'm used to the delegates milling around on the floor and being able to talk to delegates, and they have a much more cohesive feel when they're all seated on the floor rather
Right.
than up the stands. So I wasn't real happy with that. And then, of course, everybody knows that there were the Obama acceptance speech was supposed to be in the football stadium, which seats 65,000. And there were lightning warnings, which didn't get covered in a lot of the press, but there were lightning warnings, and you don't want to have an outdoor event
Right.
with lightning warnings.
Sure.
So they canceled it, and there were some very disgruntled people. 65,000 people it's not going to fit into a 21,000 seat
Right.
arena. And so there were a lot of very unhappy people. I shouldn't have scheduled an outdoor event, but the city did a nice job. They had the transportation available. They had kept the disturbances to a minimum, so they did a nice job.
Your third national convention?
My third.
And of the three you've attended, which was the best, and how did Charlotte compare?
Probably the best was Boston in '04, just because it was my first convention. But also it was an extraordinary event for me. I love the city of Boston. My husband's from Boston, so I know the city
Right.
fairly well. And we had very good accommodations. It was a very easy city to get around. Boston and the Democrats, there seems to be a happy match there.
Yes.
Even though Mitt Romney was actually governor at that time, and he did come and speak to our students.
Wow.
So that was kind of a nice event. But all three of them have been very different, and I've enjoyed all three of them, and I hope to go to a fourth. And I don't care whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. So.
Dr. Nancy Cade, chair of the Division of Social Science at the University of Pikeville, our guest on today's Where the 99 Lead. We talk about the historic 99 steps that lead to the University of Pikeville campus. They also lead from campus into our community and into our region and into the world. Truly into the world with Dr. Nancy Cade as she takes us behind closed doors of the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte. And before we wrap that up, you go to a convention like that, you have media credentials, you have access to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Who were some of the famous people that you had a chance to encounter?
One of the things that I think I enjoyed the most was I got a call from someone on the Kentucky delegation telling me to come over and hear one of the morning speakers, because the state delegations get speakers to come in and talk to them in the morning. And they wouldn't tell me why. They just said, come over, you will not regret it.
Right.
So I headed over, and so I had to drive all the way across Charlotte in the wee hours of the morning to get there in time. And I got to listen to Donna Brazile talk in a very small room. And she is an incredibly knowledgeable political strategist. And that type of information that she provided at that presentation is the kind of thing that I can use in my classes when I talk about what are the events, why are they scheduled the way they are, why are things run the way they are, and it was fascinating. But to me, the thing that I enjoyed most was not necessarily meeting the famous people, because you can get a little jaded with that, but it was meeting the delegates themselves.
Sure.
Talking with the delegates, talking with fellow faculty from around the world who are there to study the conventions and actually sit up in the stands and analyze Bill Clinton's speech. We were analyzing it. We were also sort of taking friendly bets on how long it would last. Because we all knew that it was going to last a long time.
Yes.
But that's the kind of thing that I enjoy a great deal. And then just seeing various media people and the opportunity to talk to some of them is always, to me, interesting. Running into people like Dana Bash on the street and just chatting for a minute is different than your normal day.
Yeah, absolutely. You were able to blog your experiences back to the University of Pikeville. Of course, students able to check that out, sharing your thoughts about speakers and their influence on the convention, of course. Who were some of your favorite speakers, by the way?
I think Michelle Obama did an extraordinary job. To watch the transition from the Michelle Obama of 4 years ago to the Michelle Obama of today was amazing. She is much more comfortable with an audience. She is, in some ways, a little bit more aggressive in what she says, and not in a bad way, but she's more confident. She is just more comfortable. I enjoyed listening to Julian Castro. He, which I didn't pronounce it correctly, Julian Castro. He's an up-and-comer in the party, and it was interesting to listen to him just because of his perspective being so different than the perspective of so many of the speakers I had heard. I always enjoy Joe Biden because I never know where he's going to go when he starts a speech, which is always kind of fun. But everyone's favorite at the convention was Bill Clinton, just because he is so masterful at what he does.
Yes.
And so he was extraordinary.
Have you had an opportunity to talk with students since you've returned about the blog, about what they took away from it? I have both upper level and lower level classes this semester, and I have talked to a lot of the students about what they thought of the convention, because I was able to teach for a few days before I left for the convention. Right.
And so they knew I was going to be there, so they followed it a little bit more closely than they might have otherwise.
Maybe expecting a quiz.
Well, they're going to have to do a paper.
Yes.
Some of them.
It would cause one to pay a little closer
just a
attention.
little bit.
Dr. Nancy Cade is our guest, chair of the Division of Social Science on this edition of Where the 99 Lead. It's a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville, and we talk all things regarding the University of Pikeville. The Democratic National Convention, you just mentioned a paper that will be due for your students, upper level, lower level. What other ways have you incorporated the convention into your classroom?
Well, it's not as much. It's not as much a obvious thing.
Sure.
But when we talk about the politics, when we talk about the speeches, when we talk about just political speeches in general, we talk about the difference between a convention speech and an inauguration speech, and when you talk about the style of the politicians. So for me personally, as professional development, it is an extraordinary opportunity.
Absolutely. Talking about the 2012 election coming up, it's very close actually. What are some of the new opportunities awaiting UPike students at the Washington Center?
Well, one of the things that I'm very excited about is, like I said, we'll be sending 6 students to the inauguration on the Fred W. Meyer Washington Center Scholars Program, and they are going with full scholarships. So they'll have an extraordinary opportunity.
Is that a change? Is that more students than in the past?
Yes, it is.
Very good.
We in the past have sent 4. We are sending 6 this time.
Very good.
We hope to send a handful of students to what is called Top Secret in May, which is a Washington Center seminar on national security.
Wow.
And the opportunity, we've done 2 of those seminars in the past, but this opportunity is extraordinary. We take students into the Counterterrorism Center, which is something you cannot Google.
Right.
If you try to Google its location, it will not show up on the maps.
And probably flag your IP address.
That I don't know. But we take students there. We have had the opportunity to have students hear from Joint Chiefs of Staff. We've had students hear from a couple of individuals that were in the room that the famous picture is taken from when they shot bin Laden. And you can see the president and Secretary of State Clinton and several others. We've had the opportunity to have our students hear from a couple of the people that were in that room that night.
Wow.
And so extraordinary opportunities, and we hope to continue that again. And then again, we have a student who will be doing an internship next semester. And so I'm very excited about that opportunity.
As good as your classrooms are, and you have a reputation of being one of the best on the Hill, as good as your classes are, those are the types of things that students don't get in a classroom.
Absolutely, they can't get that.
How are the students chosen for this trip?
For the Washington Center seminars, they are selected through an essay contest. The students submit an essay on why the university should send them. They are read by judges who do not know who has submitted the essay.
Sure.
The only person that knows who submitted the essay is me, and I hand them out with no names attached. The readers rank them, and then we check and make sure that they are academically eligible,
Sure.
and behaviorally eligible, and then we send this case, we're sending the top 6 students.
Very good. Dr. Nancy Cade, Chair of the Division of Social Science at the University of Pikeville, Professor of History and Political Science. Would love to audit a few of these classes of Dr. Cade's. And we're winding down this edition of Where the 99 Lead, but we've talked about the conventions and what it means to students. Also, something that has revived history in our areas, the Hatfield-McCoy first of all, the mini-series, but also a documentary. And I had a chance to catch this. Caught me completely off guard. Hey, there's Dr. Cade, one of my guests from Where the 99 Lead. You had a large part in the documentary, your insight. How has that changed history in the region and on the Hill in your classes, maybe with the Hatfield-McCoy feud?
One of the things that I find exciting is it has brought more and more attention to this area, more attention to the feud. I was pleased to be associated with both the miniseries and working with the producer on the miniseries, one of the producers on the miniseries, and the documentary. It's not perfect, but as a professional, I'm always going to pick apart history. But I'm very pleased with the way it presented the feud. I'm very pleased with the way it presented the people of this area. As someone who is not from here,
right.
I'm still very sensitive to the way I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life. And I'm still very sensitive to the way people are presented. And I thought they presented the feud in a way that was honest, and yet it was not negative. There were reasons for the feud.
Sure.
And it wasn't just because they were wild and evil people.
Real quickly, was the miniseries and documentary, were they fair to the area?
I thought they presented the area very well. I think, again, there are some issues with the history, but I thought they were very fair to the area.
Dr. Nancy Cade, always our pleasure to have you on Where the 99 Lead. Chair of the Division of Social Science and a professor of history and political science at the University of Pikeville. Dr. Nancy Cade has been our guest on this edition of Where the 99 Lead. On behalf of the University of Pikeville and Dr. Nancy Cade, I'm Andrew Joyce. Thanks for tuning in.